As things sit right now, man, what are your thoughts on the Eagles, and are they the team to beat in the NFC East?
Yeah, Rob, I think that when you look at the NFC East, it's really a two-team race at this point. It's the Eagles and it's the Cowboys and it's everybody else, right? And I think that when you look at the offseason that Howie Roseman had, I wrote about it this week in my column on Wednesday morning. Everybody points to the A.J. Brown heist. Everybody looks at what they did on offense to really bolster Jalen Hurts' supporting cast. But I think the catalyst for the Eagles' success this year is going to be the defense.
We are back, hour number 2 on this Friday. Sports Day, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network, along with Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks. I am Rob Ellis. Excited to talk to our next guest. Matt Lombardo does a phenomenal job covering the NFL, covered the Eagles, the Giants for years. I know Matt used to work with Big Matt.
What's up, big dog?
Back in the day at another spot. You can catch his work now on Heavy on Sports. He's the senior NFL reporter there and has a great piece, if you get a chance to check it out, when he hit the roads, checking out some of the camps, be it the Eagles, the Giants, etc. Lombo, what's up, my man?
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Hey, our pleasure, Matt. Our pleasure. So I guess, Matt, let's start there, man. I mean, you obviously keep a close eye on the Eagles, keep a close eye on the NFC East in general, and you visited a lot of different camps. But we haven't had a chance to really catch up with you on everything the Eagles did this offseason. So as things sit right now, man, what are your thoughts on the Eagles, and are they the team to beat in the NFC East?
Yeah, Rob, I think that when you look at the NFC East, it's really a two-team race at this point. It's the Eagles and it's the Cowboys and it's everybody else, right? And I think that when you look at the offseason that Howie Roseman had, I wrote about it this week in my column on Wednesday morning. Everybody points to the A.J. Brown heist. Everybody looks at what they did on offense to really bolster Jalen Hurts' supporting cast. But I think the catalyst for the Eagles' success this year is going to be the defense. You bring in a guy like Jordan Davis, who's a space eater who can also give you that interior pass rush. You bring in James Bradbury off the scrap heap. And I think that the Kazir White acquisition might be kind of flying under the radar as one of the biggest on defenses across the entire NFL, based on what the Eagles needed and the experience that he's going to bring that linebacking core. So I look at the Cowboys and I think that, as long as they have Dak Prescott, who's the best quarterback in the division, they're going to be in the mix, right? But when you lose the production of an Amari Cooper and you look at the issues they now have up front on the offensive line, they're kind of paper thin at linebacker outside of Micah Parsons. I think those are the two most complete teams. But if Jalen Hurts makes that leap, and if this defense in Philadelphia is as advertised, I think the Eagles have a real opportunity here to overtake them in the division.
Absolutely. When I look at this team and I look at Dallas's team, the only real I see two positions where I think they'll be able to outplay the Eagles. That's Michael Parsons on the defensive side, and then Dak being on the other side. I think everywhere else is really the Eagles are dominating as far as player for player.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. And you look at Jalen Hurts, and again, they're going to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes them, right? And, I spoke to an executive and an agent right when Kyler Murray signed his extension, and, they basically told me, what does Jalen Hurts need to do to earn that kind of a deal? He needs to lead them to the postseason rather than ride them to the postseason as he did a year ago with that #1 rushing offense. Jalen Hurts is the catalyst. He's what's going to determine the ceiling for this team. But I think that this might be the most complete roster that Howie Roseman has built during his tenure as general manager.
Absolutely. What I also liked, I did not know this, but I did not know Kelsey was his #1 draft pick. He was handpicked. That he was the guy that he hung his hat on, man. I did not know that, man. That's great about you. That you let me know that, man. That really means something to me because I had no idea he went back that far as him picking players.
Yeah, and Brandon Graham was the first player he ever selected in the first round. And I was at training camp last week, and it just kind of struck me, and I had a chance to talk to Brandon for a few minutes after practice. You look at what they've done on defense. We talked about some of the big names. We talk about Hassan Reddick coming home. You talk about Jordan Davis chosen with the same draft pick, number 13 overall, that Brandon Graham was. It's kind of like it's coming full circle for Graham, and he told me he thinks this is the most talented defense that he's been a part of in his career. And if that's the case, they're going to be a tough out.
Wow, Kelsey, Graham. I mean, he's picked some guys, man. You know, we always, you know, on him, man, but he's done some big stuff while he's been here.
I think he's had 2 really good years. I mean, it's been choppy, right? I mean, he's had some strong and then some really questionable, and I think he's come back strong the last couple of years, you know, for sure. These last 2 seasons, Matt. So, where are you with Hurts, man? I agree with everything you're laying out there, but I think we're all sort of in that wait and see mode with him. Do you have confidence one way or the other? Or are you also in the I got to see this year before I can really figure this thing out with him?
You know, Rob, I think first and foremost, the excuses are gone, right? When you drop an A.J. Brown, who not only is dominant and dynamic after the catch, but he's somebody that you can go to on your first read and get rid of the ball even quicker and make a play with the ball in his hands. And then you have Devonta Smith on the outside, kind of that home run threat, smooth route runner. Dallas Goedert, you have the running game, you have the offensive line. It just comes down to whether or not Jalen Hurts can elevate his game to that next level. And I think that he wasn't very good on third down last year. And I think that might be one of the biggest reasons why the Eagles went and got A.J. Brown. Because as I had an executive tell me last week, it's not just about the big play from A.J. Brown. It's about on 3rd and 7, you throw it 5 yards, 2 yards short of the sticks, he's going to take it for an 8 or 9 yard gain. And that's an element that they were missing in this offense, and Jalen Hurts was missing as a quarterback. Again, I think that for him to be rewarded with a long-term deal, I agree with everything that everybody has told me. But it also comes down to, you know, he needs to have a productive year. He needs to have 30 to 35 touchdowns, limit his interceptions to 8 to 12 interceptions. And I think that's when you can start having the conversation. But I don't know that he has it in him, but the Eagles don't necessarily need him to this year, right? Because they have the optionality of the 2 first-round picks, that if he's great, if he sets the world on fire, if they win the division and he has that kind of year, they can continue building out that defense, or they can go and fortify that offensive line even further. But if he struggles, the pieces are in place for them to go and get whoever this offseason's Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan is, or move up and get the quarterback maybe of their choosing in the NFL draft. So again, this year is really an interesting one for the Eagles because they have the pieces in place to make a run. But if the quarterback doesn't make the leap, they have the optionality to get the quarterback to take advantage of what they've built in coming years.
Matt, give me your philosophy on how Howie Roseman has changed his draft philosophy over the last couple of years compared to what we watched him go ride the proverbial roller coaster in terms of drafts in previous years.
Yeah, Gunnar, I think that's a really interesting question. I think it comes down to 2 things. One, I think they've surrounded themselves with better people in that front office. I mean, you look at a guy like Dave Caldwell who's sat in the general manager's chair before. You talk about, you know, developing a guy like Connor Barwin, who's been on the field, who's had success, a modicum of success in 3 different locker rooms and 3 different philosophies. I think surrounding yourself with good people. And then also the Eagles have kind of become one of the poster children for matching need with value. I don't think the last couple of years you can point to a pick and say, hey, you know what, that was a reach or that was a stretch. I think they've done a really nice job, not only of letting the boards kind of develop and come to them, but they've also kind of authored this philosophy, and you've seen other teams do it around the league. The Giants did it coming into this year as well, of when all else fails, stack as many first-round picks in your war chest in future years to be able to have optionality to move around the board. So I think those things have really unlocked Howie Roseman's, you know, ability to have success.
Matt, how big an impact do you expect the Eagles draft picks? I mean, the higher ones in particular, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Juergens. It's going to depend on Kelsey's health, obviously, but those 2 in particular, how big an impact do you think they'll have this year?
Oh, I think it's going to be huge. And I think that Jordan Davis in particular, they don't need him to be a 3-down defensive tackle, right? But if they can put him in a package where maybe it's Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and him with those are your 3-down linemen, and you're going to have Hassan Reddick and Kazir White and TJ Edwards on the edge. I mean, you can make some noise and create some havoc with that kind of a front. I don't know that Davis is going to be one of those guys who competes for Defensive Rookie of the Year. But would you be shocked if he did, especially at that size and with that athleticism? I think that he has the chance to make a real immediate impact for this team.
When you look at this game coming forward, you know, and the fact that they don't practice as much as they used to, you know, what do you think these reps are going to divvy out? You know, you think that, you know, the Jets are going to go maybe a quarter and the Eagles maybe just 2 series? You know, how do you think they're going to divvy those reps out just from this new modern NFL?
Yeah, you know, Barrett, I think it's going to be interesting to watch because the Jets are going through a little bit of a situation losing Mekhi Becton for the year. There's real concern in that organization about George Font regardless of what they say publicly, there's concern about him being able to be sustainable as the left tackle. I think you're going to see him maybe move to right. That's why they flirted with Dwayne Brown for a week or two before Mekhi Becton's injury and then ultimately signed him. So I think they're going to be a little bit more cautious about how long they keep their offensive linemen out on the field. Brown just signed yesterday. I don't know that he's going to be in uniform. From an Eagles standpoint, I agree. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 series at most. Nick Sirianni seems to be at the leading edge of these modern head coaches of not tackling to the ground, limiting, your contact in practice. And I think that there's kind of a fine line you have to walk, right? I understand not wanting to beat your brains in August. I understand not wanting to risk injury, but at some point, I think you need to experience tackling and contact to get you ready for the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Jets and Eagles both play their starters for maybe 2 series at most.
Is it like that everywhere you've been thus far? The same type of schedule?
Yeah, the Giants, they played their starters for, I believe, 3 series about a first quarter last night. And, talked to some other teams around the league that are resting their starters. I think it really depends on, the philosophy of the coaching staff and what you need to see, right? Because we haven't even touched on it yet, but Daniel Jones has struggled mightily during this training camp, whether it's interceptions, inaccuracy on timing patterns, on routes outside the numbers with his wide receivers. The offense hasn't really had any sort of identity. So you saw Brian Dable last night put the starters out there for about a quarter, longer than Mac Jones was out there for the New England Patriots, that's for sure. So I think that teams that need to see more, teams that are hoping to get more out of their starters, are going to play them more in these exhibition games, and the Giants certainly fell into that category.
When you watch this Eagles offense take the field for the first time tonight, what do you want to see from the offense in general?
I think it's the splash plays, right? I think that can A.J. Brown be that guy who's going to stretch the field for you? Or is he just going to be somebody that, breaks 4 tackles and turns a 7-yard pass into a 12-yard gain? I want to see, Miles Sanders show the ability to break off a big run and protect the football, because I think the fumbles have been a little bit of an issue for him dating back to Penn State. I think that this team rode its rushing offense to the postseason a year ago. If they can have that balance again and they can make some splash plays with some explosive runs, I think that's going to have a lot of people pretty excited.
Matt, I'm curious what you think of the Commanders. Wentz goes down there, Rivera, at least some stability in the coaching ranks, but there's always a lot going on with that team, man. And they've already fired a coach at this point. How good do you think they can be? And what's your sense of the kind of season that Wentz has down there?
Yeah, Rob, I have a real time buying in on Carson Wentz, right? Not only after what we saw in Philadelphia, but that was a 5-alarm fire. What happened in Week 18 in Jacksonville last year, where all the Colts had to do was go down, take care of their business, and they'd be in the postseason. Right. And he had one of the worst games of his professional career in that game. And you look at how quickly Frank Reich and the Colts decided to ship him off to Washington. I think there's a lot of young talent there. I really like the receiving core. I think the duo of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson has a chance to both push for 1,000-yard receiving type of years. Antonio Gibson is really versatile. I like what he brings them outside, out of the backfield as a pass catcher. And that front seven, there's a lot of talent. Former first-round picks in that front seven along that defensive line, but it comes down to the quarterback. And I think at this point, Carson Wentz kind of is what he is, right? And I think that, when you have Carson Wentz as your starting quarterback and you have an offensive line that's full of holes and full of question marks, I have a hard time believing the Commanders are anything more than maybe an 8-win football team at most.
Hey, Matt, when you look at this Giants team, they bring in a new head coach in Dable, who's a great offensive mind, likes to move players around, like to keep the pieces moving. And then you have a defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale, who basically is going to he's going to attack you every down. He's blitzing some kind of way. I expect the Giants to still finish at the bottom of the NFC East, but do you expect them to be more competitive and possibly hurt a few feelings along the way?
Gunnar, I totally agree. I think they could be a team that wins 7 or 8 games at most. But I think, again, it comes down to the quarterback. And I'm not sold that Daniel Jones can make that leap. And I think the Giants, by not picking up his 5th-year option, sent a clear message that they're not sold. And they have the 2 first-round picks, that was this year, but they have the optionality next year to go and get their quarterback in the draft if he falters. But listen, I think the offensive line is going to be markedly better. They now have their 2 two bookends and Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. Thomas looks like he took another step forward when I saw their practice last week. I think that you look at the defensive side of the ball, Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be a problem. And I think that he's a guy who's explosive. He's a guy who has multiple pass rush moves. What's going to determine his ceiling as a rookie, I had executives tell me going into the draft that he has a tendency to turn it on and off like a switch. They need to get him to be dialed in for 60 minutes a game. If he can do that, he's going to be tough to block. I think their secondary has some really nice pieces, especially Xavier McKinney, who really looks like a budding star in the making at the strong safety spot. But I think that they're a team that, again, it might not happen for them this year, but you look down the line a year or two down the road, if they get the quarterback situation figured out, they seem to have figured out, this coaching staff, how to maximize Saquon Barkley. I spoke to people close to Barkley who told me that, Brian Daboll has made a concerted effort, and you've seen it in practice, to use him not only as a running back, but put him in the slot, split him out wide, use him in motion, then send him on wheel routes to get him the ball in space. Because Saquon Barkley is not necessarily a guy that you want running 20 to 22 times off tackle or up the A-gap. You want him in space. And he's a matchup nightmare against cornerbacks and outside linebackers. And this coaching staff finally seems to grasp the idea of how to maximize him. So if you look down the line a year or two with the young talent they have in place, and I really believe in Joe Schoen as a general manager. I think that he had to show a lot of restraint this offseason because they didn't have the cap space. And to his credit, they just picked up some Band-Aids along the offensive line. They weren't big spenders. They preserved their cap space for next year, where I think they're top 5 in spending flexibility. Next year, the year after, that could be a team to watch in the division and maybe more than that. But I think they're going to take their lumps as they grow this season.
Matt, we've talked about this on the show. Do you sense the NFC being really wide open this year? I mean, you've seen some teams with some departures. The Packers lose Devontae Adams. The Rams, it's a difficult thing to do, to repeat. It's been since the mid-2000s since that's happened. You look at the South, you look at the North, et cetera. How do you view the NFC in general?
Yeah, Rob, I agree. I think there might be 4, 5 teams at most that you can look at and say, okay, those are legitimate playoff contenders and more. And they're kind of in tiers, right? Tampa Bay, I think anytime Tom Brady is in the mix, especially with that receiving core, you drop Julio Jones, they're very much in the Super Bowl conversation, right? You look at the Rams, the potential to repeat. Obviously, you have Aaron Rodgers, even without Devontae Adams. That defense is criminally underrated. I think that they could hold teams to like 13 points per game. And if they do that, they're going to be a really tough team to beat, especially with Aaron Rodgers in that offense. And then, of course,
kids from Georgia.
Yep. And I think after those 3 or 4 teams, after the Rams, the Buccaneers, and the Packers, you have this second tier, right, where you have teams like the Eagles and the Niners and the Cowboys. So you can kind of make an argument they could be in the postseason. That's a stark contrast to the AFC. Where I can make a Super Bowl argument, a legitimate Super Bowl argument for 6 or 7 teams, let alone a handful of teams that you say, if they don't make the postseason, it's a disappointment for them. So I think the AFC is going to be a real gauntlet. But if you get hot at the right time in the NFC in week 15, 16, 17, 18 into the postseason, anybody can make the Super Bowl out of that conference, in my opinion.
Well, can you rank the coaches, in the NFC? I mean, the NFC East, because at this point, I still got the bias of Nick as the guy, but I mean, in all reality, Dable coming in and Rivera, being able to turn that organization is upside down right now, but he'll right that ship. How would you rank the coaches?
Yeah, I think that Ron Rivera, just based on pedigree, based on trying to get players to buy in, and just the experience, I still put Ron Rivera at the top of that list. Then I look at Nick Sirianni, and I think that just the way he gets his players to buy in by wearing the player-specific T-shirts in practice every day. Barrett, that in July and August you don't want to be tackling to the ground during training camp, right? So he's endearing his players to him in that regard, and I think that he trusts his system and he trusts his coordinators to kind of run the show and have him kind of be that CEO type. So I think Nick Sirianni is probably number 2 on that list. And Brian Daboll, I think, is number 3 with the arrow pointed up. It's easy to knock on the doorstep of the Super Bowl with Josh Allen as your quarterback. But what can you do with a developing young quarterback and a young roster? He has the track record of doing it. So I think there's a chance that he has a lot of success long-term in New York. And then Mike McCarthy in Dallas, I mean,
Sean will be there.
We all saw how that Niners playoff game ended last year.
Yeah.
Right?
Sean Payton, line one.
Yeah, Sean Payton, line one.
Hey, Matt, let's go back to the AFC for just a moment. When the dust settles, who do you like as your team to stand above everybody else to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, Gunnar, I think when you look at the roster in Buffalo and you look at Josh Allen and what he did in that divisional playoff game, it's not his fault his defense couldn't get off the field against Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
I think they're going to be almost impossible to beat in Buffalo. And I think that they had the luxury to bring in a kid like James Cook at running back in the draft who could step in and make an instant impact. You bring in Von Miller. You talk about the quarterbacks you have to go up against in the postseason. Not only does Von Miller have the experience, but that's another pass rush weapon when you're going up against the Patrick Mahomeses, the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts, the Derek Carrs and the Russell Wilsons and all of those guys. The Bills, to me, are the clear-cut favorite in the AFC, if there is such a thing. But I still think two other teams to watch. I think Cincinnati is there to stay, especially when you look at what they did along their offensive line. I think Joe Burrow is only going to continue getting better from here. And in the AFC West, I think the gap, if there was one, between the Chiefs and the Chargers has closed. And I think the Chargers are going to be there at the end as well. So if you want to ask me for my final three, my big three in the AFC, it's the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay.
Oh, Chargers. Right. I like that. Barrett's a Raider guy coming out of the West, but that is interesting, man. That is really – let me ask, I know you've written about this too, Matt, on more of a serious note here with Deshaun Watson. Just the whole thing, man. I mean – the deal that Cleveland gives them, Cleveland kind of, selling their soul there, taking a shot at this. Initially it's 6 games. Now it could end up being as much as a year. Kind of walk me through just your thoughts on all of it and where we are right now.
It's difficult for me to take the NFL seriously on some of these other disciplinary actions when you look at, in Atlanta, the wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, betting on his own team, and he gets a year suspension. I think he bet once or twice when he wasn't even playing.
Right.
And you look at Deshaun Watson with 23 or more credible sexual abuse allegations, sexual misconduct allegations. It's hard for me to take the NFL seriously when it comes to disciplinary matters if he only gets 6 games. And it felt like, based on their track record, that 6 games was where it was going to come in. But I think that good on Roger Goodell for saying that he would prefer an indefinite suspension when that ruling first came down, and good for them for actually appealing the ruling, because I think that anything short of 12 games to a season, I think it sends a horrible message to fans. It basically tells your female fans that you are just a revenue stream for us, and we don't care about how we are viewed or how you feel watching our product when you let somebody like Deshaun Watson with these allegations back on the field before Halloween.
Yeah, that is fascinating, man. The whole thing has just been so weird, man. And you're Cleveland as of right now. You're going to start him in a preseason game just because you have to get him reps because he hasn't played football in so long.
Right.
Knowing knowing there's no chance he plays week 1 and he may not play the entire season. Kevin Stefanski, I was saying this to Barrett and Derek. I'm like, I don't even know how you gauge what this year looks like from them. I mean, they could be awful, and I can't necessarily even blame him because there's so much other stuff going on with them.
Right.
And I wouldn't rule out them making a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, or if Garoppolo winds up being released, I think that they'd be the first team in line to try to sign him, because I don't know that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the answer there. And you look at the rest of that roster.
No.
Top 5 offensive line, right? Top 3 backfield. You bring in Amari Cooper in that wide receiving core, and you have playmakers at all 3 levels of that defense. I don't know that Brissett is the guy to maximize that. And they're in a division where you have the Bengals staring down the pike. You have the Ravens potentially as a legitimate worst to first candidate with Lamar Jackson if he reverts to form after his injury. It just feels like if there's a team kind of waiting in the weeds to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo one way or the other, I think that Cleveland is that team.
Wow, how much are you going to pay quarterbacks on that team?
That's a lot of salary.
Right.
Wow.
Paying half of what's his name's deal. Then you got that's
you're still paying on
Baker. You're still paying Baker. Yeah.
How do you pull that off? I mean, they gave him.
They still have like $28 million in cap space, though.
Really?
Sure how
is Les Snead running them too? Let me ask you about Tom Brady. This thing's kind of strange, right? Apparently, it was agreed upon before he came back this year that there was going to be like these 10 days he's taking off, essentially, in the middle of the preseason. And they expect him back after August 20th game, the game next Saturday. weird to you? Par for the course with Brady. When you have leverage like that, you can do whatever you want. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I think this one kind of caught me as surprised as it did you guys, right? Because, on one hand, it's like, okay, you have all of this going on down there with all of the injuries in training camp along the offensive line. Maybe he just wants to get away. Maybe he just wants to clear his head. He is Tom Brady. You know that he's going to be ready when the season starts. But you just kind of wonder, what was the impetus to this? What's the reasoning? And I can't get anybody to give me a straight answer of why exactly he's leaving the team for 13 days. But he did retire for 40 and he came back. So I'm assuming 2 weeks' time, I think that he'll be back and ready to go when the games start counting for real.
Very strange. Very strange. Last one, back to the Eagles here. Jalen Reagor, is he an Eagle come week 1?
I would highly doubt it. I think that receiving room is way too crowded at this point when you have A.J. Brown, when you have Devonta Smith. I think Quez Watkins is a guy who's a rising star and, going to push for reps in this system as well. I think there are just too many teams with needs. I was told that there was at least a preliminary conversation with the Denver Broncos that they've kicked the tires. And then you look at what happened in Cleveland. And you look at them losing JAKIB Grant, who they signed as a kick returner and a wide receiver, in that offense. They're dropping like flies in that camp. And I was told from multiple sources the Browns are looking for a veteran wide receiver to replace Grant. Reagor might be that guy entering his third year and ascending. And if the Eagles can get a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, I think that'd be tough for them to turn down based on how deep they are at the position.
Interesting stuff. Right. Matt, listen, man, we love your work. You follow him on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL. And, of course, he's a senior NFL reporter for Heavy on Sports. Matt, for people who may not know, be familiar with Heavy on Sports, let them know what it is and what exactly who you're working for.
Yeah, you can check us out on heavy.com. We are experiencing all kinds of exponential growth from a monthly standpoint, year over year, whatever metric you use. We cover the entire league. We have a strong presence in the NBA, also a news side as well. But heavy.com is the website, and, of course, at Heavy on Sports on Twitter. A lot of fun. I'm going to be doing a weekly mailbag every Friday. I have an all-encompassing national column that drops every Wednesday morning. And during season, we're going to be debuting a First and 10 column with my 10 takeaways from around the NFL on Sunday. So a lot of fun things in the offing and some more things that we're working on as well.
Awesome, bro. You working, man.
Man. Keep up the good work, Matt. We appreciate it. Look forward to having you again on the show, man. Thank you for your time.
Guys, always a great time. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully we do this again soon.
All right, Matt. Take care, man. Bro. Appreciate it. Matt Lombardo does an excellent job covering the NFL. All right, guys, we'll keep it rolling. We keep rolling with the NFL. Don't go anywhere. We'll mix in some Phillies, mix in a bunch of other weird stuff that went on. When you see this video of DJ Moore playing Peacemaker and Antonio Brown's goodbye statement to himself. We'll do all those kind of things. Don't go anywhere. Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Time to talk a little Razor technology. Yes, you got cyber threats like ransomware on a seemingly endless uptick and the risk of a breach or data loss higher than ever. The need to know just who is accessing your networks, systems, and applications is mission critical. Identity management for Razor Technology is a holistic framework of policies and technologies that lock down access to the right users and for only the right reasons. We deploy cutting-edge systems and solutions that identify, authenticate, and monitor access across your entire IT system. Razor Technology determines how users gain an identity in your system, what roles they need to fill, and enforces access controls with network protocols, digital certificates, behavioral analysis, and secure authentication methods. Talk to Razor Technology today to learn how to identify management, and you can reduce the risk of data breach while avoiding costly errors and downtime due to lack of access. Contact Razor Technology today at 866-797-3282. That is 866-797-3282. Or you can visit us online at razor-tech.com, razor-tech.com.